I'm Bruce, K1BG. As I think everybody's quite aware, we have a number of new hams who are in the club, some who graduated from our recent tech class, and some who have just got into amateur radio. And we started this 10-meter net that we do on Monday nights after the regular net, and I get questions about QSL cards. And I know Les has done presentations here before on QSL cards and QSLing. I want to make it really a little bit simpler and easier to understand from right from the beginning, right when you do your first QSL card. I've always loved QSLing, by the way, from the time I was a little kid, and I love holding the card in my hand, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So again, this is basics. What are QSLs? What information do they have? Where do you buy them? Those kinds of things, okay? So back in the early 20th century, ships at sea had this problem. They were operating Morse code, but you had operators from different countries using a multitude of different languages. So these Q signals were developed so that simple information could be conveyed from one ship to another, one operator to another, without having to speak the other person's language. And the Q signal, QSL, stood for, can you acknowledge receipt? Okay? Meaning receipt of a message. Okay? So if you sent QSL, okay, it's a statement. If you say QSL question mark, it's a question. Okay? So either I'm acknowledging receipt or can you acknowledge receipt? For hams, the term QSL or QSL card is an acknowledgement of the contact. Okay? Two people have to have the contact on one frequency or on a close by frequency at exactly the same time in order to carry on a conversation. And the QSL card has to convey that information, has to contain the call sign of both stations. Okay? We'll talk more about that in a minute. These days, people are confirming contacts either with paper, the old-fashioned way, or electronically. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So when you get on the air and somebody says QSL direct, what that means is that they would like you to QSL directly to them, directly to their address. Okay? With a card. Okay? QSL direct means with a card. Okay? They might say QSL to my QRZ address. What that means is that you go to QRZ.com and you look at the address that's there. So for instance, and let's hope this works. It does not work. And I do not know how to do this. How do I get out of?
You want to swap it to a different wheel? It's F11 or something like that.
F11?
It's F11. Yeah, no, that's not it.
Alt tab or something.
He's hitting all the F keys. There we go.
Which one?
Duplicate, so it'll be the same thing on both screens.
Yeah, but then I have to go back again and blah, blah, blah.
Maybe second screen only. I don't know.
You know what? I'll come back. You know what? I'll come back to this later. Okay?
There you go. You have it.
Then,
Hit escape and get out of that mode.
Yeah. Right.
that ain't it, but stand by. All right, so you go to QRZ.com. This is my QRZ webpage. It effectively has the information from the FCC. They download it. You create an account. You can put whatever you want here. But for instance, I take QSL direct from Logbook of the World, that we'll talk about that, or from the Bureau. Here's my mailing address. So if somebody wants to send a card directly to me, that's where they get the information from if they say QSL direct. Logbook of the world. Okay, before we get that, via the Bureau, we did a card sort last month for the QSL Bureau. Okay, so if you want to send cards via the Bureau, if you send outgoing, you send them to the ARRL QSL Bureau, and they will forward them to hams all around the world. And if you tell people that they can QSL via the Bureau, you send money to the W1 QSL Bureau, and they will forward cards to you that come in from other places around the world. We talked about this last month. This is so that you reduce the costs of QSL, sending QSL cards internationally, right? Cards are bundled together and sent as a bundle rather than you doing first-class mail to all these countries around the world. QSL managers. Sometimes stations will have a person that will handle the cards for them. And that's called a QSL manager. And you'll hear somebody say, QSL via K1BG, which is me. Now, I'm not anybody's QSL manager, so don't send me your cards. But the point is that stations will have a manager that handles cards for them. And so you write the card as if you're sending it to the station you talk to, but you mail it to another ham who will then send you a card back in the mail. Logbook of the world. I'm not going to go there now. We can do it later. Logbook of the world is a service provided by the American Radio Relay League. It's not a logbook at all. What you do is you upload your contacts to it. Other stations upload their contacts to it. And if those contacts match, same time, same stations, same band, all the information matches, the contact is electronically confirmed and applied to awards. Okay? So that's what Logbook of the World is all about. Logbook of the World can be very difficult to understand because the ARRL has made it absolutely certain that you cannot cheat. Okay? And this is a side of amateur radio or society that I don't want to talk about, but people will try to cheat at things, and the ARRL has made it really, really, absolutely the gold standard. You really can't cheat. It's very difficult. Whereas if you do other services, QRZ.com, EQSL, EQSL stands for Electronic QSL, they're not so strict in their security methods. OQRS is an interesting service. It's like a QSL manager for a lot of different operations, okay? And so if you're a de-expedition, and we haven't talked about de-expeditions, but groups of hams will go to rare countries around the world and operate there, okay, in order to put those countries on the air. And in a lot of cases, they use OQRS for the QSL cards. And again, if you want a card or if you want the confirmation, you go through OQRS. And they will tell you OQRS, and I can link to that after if you like. Also, sometimes on the air, they'll say, or sometimes on the QRZ.com page, they'll say SASE required. If you're in a country where you're getting 500 cards a month direct in the mail, and they don't have a QSL bureau, QSLing can be very expensive. So they want you to send a self-addressed stamped envelope. Well, that might be great if you're trying to get a card from somebody else here in the United States where you have the postage. But if you don't have like stamps from the country you're sending the card to, how do they get it back here? They'll ask for green stamps. And a green stamp is nothing more than, I don't know, some of you are old enough to remember S&H green stamps. But when they say they want a green stamp, it means they want some cash in the envelope. Okay? So when they say green stamps, that's what they mean.
And a green stamp is a dollar.
Okay, so the next couple of slides. What is required in a QSL card as far as information goes? What's out there? What kind of QSLs are out there? KB3IFH, I'll talk more about. He's actually the guy I go to for my QSL cards. We'll talk some more about that, but I stole some of these images from his sample QSL cards. So this is a typical one-sided QSL card. And when I say one-sided, all the information is on the front. Typically, the back side of these cards is blank. And if you just want to send the postcard in the mail, you put the address and the stamp and all that stuff on the back information. He has his call sign, which you need on the card to identify who the card is from. And you need information that confirms the contact. So this block here, confirming information with, and it could be KC1 VSQ. Call sign goes here. Day, month, and year. By the way, sometimes, depending on where you live in the world, that could be month, day, year. Okay? But the information has to be there, has to be clear. UTC, Universal Time, which is Greenwich Mean Time, not local time. And again, for hams to be on the same, internationally, same time, it's got to be Greenwich time. The frequency band in megahertz. Now these days, everybody has readouts to like 1/10 of a hertz. All you have to do there is put the frequency band, okay? Sometimes this is band. So you could have 7 megahertz there, or you could put 40 down there for 40 meters, as long as it's clear and you know what it is. RST, signal report. If you're on phone, it's only readability signal strength, but 5.9, 5.8, 5.89, whatever it is. The mode you're on, single sideband, FT8, CW, RTTY, whatever the mode is that you're using, okay? And a little courtesy here. It says QSL, please or thanks. If you're sending the card out, okay, you circle please, because presumably you're interested in getting a card back. If you're responding to a card that's been sent to you, you circle thanks. Okay? That way when the person gets the card on the other side, they know not to send another card out, and then you keep sending cards back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Because if you're like me, you don't keep track of the cards that you send out, and so you don't want to keep doing that over and over. But that's the basic information that you need on the card. These days, people add things like their grid square, okay, which I would encourage you to do, okay. Sometimes they put their county. There are awards for county hunters, so some people like that on there. Sometimes they'll adorn their cards with their ARRL members, their local radio clubs. Mary requested, asked the question, can I use the club logo on my QSL cards? And the answer is yes. I don't see why not. But this is typical in what you would see on a one-sided QSL card. Okay? But what's really important, confirming QSL with, you put the call sign of the other station on there. This shouldn't be KABL in this slot, and I've seen that done, and I'll show you an example later, which I actually didn't notice until I was doing this presentation, but it's interesting. But it's the other station, so it's clear who's doing what. Les is a QSL checker for the DXCC program, DXCC being the ARRL's premier award, the DX, short for abbreviation for Distance Century Club, DXCC. And Les checks cards manually, and these are the kinds of things you look for, right?
Yep, and I check cards not just for DXCC, but DUCC, WAS, WAC, a whole bunch of them.
So this is a typical one-sided card, okay?
I've worked that guy like 50 times.
Have you? Really? All right. Here's a two-sided card. And again, this is from KB3IFH, okay, some of his samples. This is a traditional little print shop card. When I got licensed, you would get a package in the mail from this QSL company in Texas called Little Print Shop. I don't know where they got their information from, because I know people who got packages from Little Print Shop addressed to them with their call sign before their license came in the mail from the FCC, okay? And they would send sample cards. And this was a common card back in the 60s and 70s. My original card was also, I got the package from Little Print Shop. I ordered some cards, okay? And it was somewhat similar to this, okay? But this is a two-sided card. When you go to KB3 IFH, he has dozens of reverse cards that you can pick, the backside. So this is a typical one that I've had cards like this before. If you don't have your contact information on the front, and some cards don't, you put it on the back, and here's all the information that we talked about in the previous card, right? The station you worked, confirming the contact on the date and the time and the mode and the frequency band and the signal report, all that stuff. On the other side, you put the address, okay? Some people, if you're like me, QSL by putting the card in an envelope. Costs a little bit more, but what happens now with the automatic card readers that the post office uses, if they can't read your handwriting, they'll have a printer put a barcode or something so that the mail can be tracked, and they wind up, in my opinion, destroying the QSL card. They either whack the front or they whack the back, or it gets handled badly. I like to put it in an envelope so you have a card more like this, and maybe if you're busy, you'll work the same station multiple times, right? So you have two radio here, where this is to the station you're talking to, okay? And you have the day and the time and the frequency and the mode and the signal report and all that stuff. And you have a little space here for a comment, okay? And here you can put your transmitter, your antenna, the amount of power you're using, that kind of thing, okay? Same information, just a little bit slightly different, okay? Different ways of presenting it. And again, it's up to you. When you go to the person making the card, you decide what you want on there. So, the next question is, what do you want on the front of the card? I'm going to drop this down just a hair. So, this particular card, they're in Fort Lauderdale. They've decided to put a picture on the front. Okay? Again, it's up to you. If you have 100 hams, you might have 500 QSL cards. There are people that have multiple different cards. Famous call sign, WB2JKJ. This guy was a teacher in New York City, had an amateur radio club at his school, okay? He's got the Big Apple. That's his New York City theme, right? A lot of graphics here. AB3AP, okay? What's interesting here, he's got the information. This is kind of a throwback to the 30s or 40s. Gil Gildersleeve, who was a graphic artist for the ARRL, he says output power here is, and on the QSL, if you want to put that you're running a kilowatt or 100 watts or whatever, you put it right there, and it's kind of cute inside the graphic, right? License plate QSL card. Okay, these are quite popular, particularly if you're in California and you have snappy looking QSL cards or snappy looking license plates. This guy obviously likes riding a horse, okay? I don't know. It's one of the cards I saw. Picture QSL cards are now very popular because printing technology has come along. When I was a kid, you saw very few pictures on QSL cards. Map QSL cards are also fairly popular. Sometimes political statements on QSL cards, okay? And sometimes patriotic kinds of things. People that are fans of certain transceivers. There was a time when companies used QSL cards as a marketing campaign. So you would see, I know in the 60s, I got a nice Pontiac Firebird on the front of the car, on the front of the QSL card, and it was a Detroit station, and the guy worked for Pontiac, and they printed his QSL cards for him. So it was free advertising. So there's a million things you can do with your QSL cards. Later on, if we have time, I'll go to some of the websites. Okay. So people ask me the question, Why do you like paper QSL cards? Because now you have the ability to just send them to QRZ.com and get your award and be done with it. Okay? In my opinion, okay, a picture tells a story. When I hold that QSL card, the experience of that contact comes right back to me. So here is one of my favorite QSL cards. I was a 15-year-old kid. I got on the air one June night. Was close to 8 o'clock, close to 9 o'clock at night. And I tuned up on the 15-meter band. And right underneath me, right where I was tuning up, I hear CQ, 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 VK3XB. And I almost fell out of my chair. Okay? There's no way I'm going to talk to this guy. Okay? Now thinking about it later, this guy VK3XB, he had worked all states on 40 meters with novices. He was in the novice part of the frequency band, and he probably heard me tuning up and knew who I was, right? So he called CQ exactly where I was listening, and I had a nice short conversation with him, almost fell out of my chair, okay? QSL'd immediately because I had to have this card, okay? And by the way, he says, thanks for your nice remarks. That's because I put a nice letter in telling him I was 15 years old and my first contact with Australia. I was so excited. Okay. So my point is, okay, is that this is burned in my head, and this is what gets me excited about amateur radio. Okay. And having a logbook somewhere with this contact and not having the card, there's nothing for me to really touch or visually remember. Okay? By the way, you know what I was mentioning earlier about the card and to and from and all of that? So you have the old man, Ivor, okay, and his wife, okay, who shared the same QSL card. And technically, this should have been with, I was WN1KBG at the time. This is for him to say that it's VK3XB and not VK3KS. And this should have been to me here, okay? But I didn't notice this actually until I was doing the presentation like yesterday. And I've had this card for over 50 years, okay? So this guy was quite famous, by the way. Very good CW operator. Both him and his wife were very good CW operators. And his passion was talking to American teenagers who were novices. He had worked all states with novices on 40 meters, which is really hard to do, okay? And he really loved doing this. And he was very proud of it. And if you put VK3XB in a Google search today, you will see people who have shared their experiences when they talked to him 50, 60 years ago. Bill, you have a question? Okay, so VK3XB, VK is Australia. This guy here is in Hill South, Victoria, Australia, which is near Sydney, Australia. Yeah. So, thank you, Bill. All right, so where do you find your QSL card? So there's lots of places. If you just go to a local printer, they will print what you want, right? Here are some people that specialize in QSLs, and if you do a Google search, you'll find lots. In fact, there's a company that's called QSL Printers, and I couldn't find anything having to do with QSL cards on there, which I found that really interesting too. But anyway, I use KB3IFH. I think his quality is excellent. He's here in the U.S. He goes to like the Dayton Hamvention and stuff, but that's because he's just passionate about what he does. I think he does a very good job. We'll peruse these websites in a minute. I've used also UX5UO before. He's in the Ukraine, okay? And I don't know how he delivers his cards for the price that he does them. They're high quality cards. They're very affordable. You'll get a box from him with the cards with like 60 stamps on it. I thought it was just me when I got the box, but then I see pictures of other people and they're all the same. It's like, I don't know how much it costs, but it's like he has 5-cent stamps for sending a $30 package kind of thing. Chester Press, I found them on Google. They look pretty good. LZ1JZ, another international one. His cards look pretty good. There's a lot of others. So let's digress for a second here. And I'm going to get out of...
I bring it up, there's one of the things I've noticed is lately I'm getting QSL cards in email, but it's like a picture of the actual card. It's like, instead of sending me the card, I get an email. Whenever I get that, I'm like, this is cheap. Right.
So that is, it's something that's recent. Oh, man. Okay, we're here again, and I want to hit escape and get out of it. Good. All right. So, if you go to KB3IFH, this is his page. You'll see here QSL examples. So let me show you examples. So picture QSLs, graphic QSLs, goofy QSL cards.
They have the NVARC 15-day on the air card on there.
No, and they don't have my card on there either. But you know, whatever your passion is, right? So if it's battleships, that's a USS Iowa and it's a zero call. If it's aircraft carriers, whatever it is, that's your passion. You can display that with a QSL card. KB3IFH has, for instance, state QSL cards. We talked about maps and that kind of thing, right? Okay, so he's got those. He's got license plate QSL cards. We talked about those, right? What's really interesting is that he's the only place that I've seen that has the Massachusetts QSL card with the little radio wave in between the number and the first letter after the numbers. And this is the way the card actually is, and I've never seen printers that actually got that right. So I thought that was quite good.
That isn't a national thing. There's only 15 states in the union that do that.
And by the way, he has the backs. These are all the stock different backs of cards that he has, right? So you have a wide variety of things that you can pick. So it's up to you what QSL cards you pick. My advice to you is if you're just getting started, if you have thoughts about getting a vanity call sign in the future, don't buy 1,000 cards, okay? Buy 100 cards. There's nothing wrong with starting out slow. If you buy 1,000 cards, it takes you a long time. Even if you QSL every single contact that you make, it takes you a long time to go through 1,000 cards.
How about 3,000?
On the other hand, if you're a big contester and you do a multi-operator, multi-station contest where you work 7,000 stations in a weekend, you might get 1,000 cards just from that weekend. Okay, so it just kind of depends. All right, so this is typical. I don't know if you want to see some of the other QSL printers. If you go, we did talk about Logbook of the World. So you go to Logbook of the World, you log on. You notice up here, it says here, you have 86,226 QSL records. That's what I've uploaded to Logbook of the World. you have 43,138 QSL records. Those are confirmations. Those are contacts where the other station has uploaded the information and the two have matched. So when it comes to awards, all of those contacts can be used for the different awards that there are. If I go to the awards tab here, this is DXCC. So this tells me what my DXCC totals are. Okay? So this is between the cards that I've been credited for and the automatic ones that have cleared. Okay?
1,600 or something?
What, for?
Challenge?
Yeah, but I don't pay attention to it. Is that good? 1,600?
That's not bad.
I don't know.
I mean, it was 1,000 to start, right?
So I only pay attention to, like, this one here, I think, or I got 4 that I haven't put in the mix, but I only keep track of the mixed. I don't really care about working every country on every band and every mode.
What's the mix number? I can't see.
So the mix, 350 between all of them.
Correct.
333. I think I only need 2. Current, it says 336. What's now 340?
340.
Yeah, but I don't know.
You have one there that's not processed.
These here haven't been processed. I don't know.
So you're probably 2-3 wide.
I'm only 2 away. North Korea and one other.
Yeah, I need.
So,
Are there any actual operators in North Korea?
It's illegal.
That's what I thought. So it's like, why is that even on the list here?
Well, occasionally somebody gets permission and they'll go and make a few hundred contacts in the first hour or 2 that they're on the air, okay? And then the Korean, they'll be given permission by like the PTT to operate, and as soon as the Army finds out about it, they come and shut them down. So this has happened once or twice in the last 50, 100, I don't know.
The World Food Hunger guy did, I don't know, some years back.
So I know people who do have North Korea. So, W1ZZ, who was in the club before he retired and moved south, he had them all. As soon as he worked, North Korea was the last one. He took his tower down and.
He says, I'm done.
All right. Let's see here. So, what else do I want to? Yeah, I think that's about it. So I hope this gives particularly the newer hams a better feeling for QSL cards and what you need. And don't be afraid of QSLing. It's fun. I used to love it when I was a kid, running out to the mailbox every day to see what cards showed up in the mail, so. And
like the cards become like the memories. It's like, I remember that contact. That was like a great contact.
Yeah, any questions, comments? I'm ego driven, and so I have a big blue card with my call letters as big as you can get them on the front and nothing else. And there's no name, there's no city, there's no town. What I really like is when I see a picture of a shack in a magazine. I love it when I see my QSL card on the wall. And I want it to stand out as much as possible. And that's happened to me. I flipped through QST and seen somebody sitting there and seen my card on the wall, and it's like, wow, that's great. Mary?
You don't have to say QSL direct to know that. Like, I made a contact, and I do want to send a card. But we never said, can you?
No, if you want to send a card, you should. So the question for the camera is, do you have to say QSL direct or QSL information? If you want to send the card, you should send the card, okay? In my opinion, it's a courtesy. If somebody sends you a card in the mail, you should return a card. Now, sometimes on their QRZ page, they'll flat out say that I don't QSL, okay? Personally, I don't agree with that, but that's up to them if that's their policy. Okay. If I get a card through the mail, I return it through the mail. If I get a card through the bureau, I return it through the bureau. Sometimes I'll get a card and there'll be a green stamp in it. There'll be money. Okay. My attitude is when I'm retired and destitute, I'll take all the money that people want to give me, but that this is a hobby. I don't get a lot of cards. And so if somebody sends me money in the mail, okay, I put the money right back in the card and I send them a QSL card and I pay for that card because I consider that a courtesy. So I don't know if that answers your question or not.
But when I looked at the contact and they had on their site, $2. It was down in Brazil. You can contact me, there's my information.
Yep. So again, you know, for a lot of stations, particularly third world countries, these people do amateur radio, but they may not have enough funds to do all the QSLing. In a lot of cases, it's very expensive these days for them to send outgoing QSL cards. And they make a lot of contacts and give a lot of people the country, but it would cost a lot of money if they had to send first class airmail, you know, every time they have a contact. So that is, if that's in their QRZ.com page, that's what that means.
We chatted a little bit, so that was a good call. But the other ones are like hearing contests. So that's one right after the other. So they're like, you know, make the connection. Thank you for your call. Then they want
to the next one, right? But even those contacts count for awards and things. Or sometimes people just like to have the wallpaper up on the wall. So if they do that, I would send the card. If you want the card, I would send it via the bureau. Okay. And you should wait a year or 2 years and you'll usually get a card in return.
Depends on how bad you want the card and what you're willing to do to get it.
So there's a couple of cards that I've gotten that are what I consider to be amazing contacts, either long distances or strange conditions. I love getting those. I love getting those cards. So
the most expensive card was when K1ZM went to somewhere like around India. It was my 300th country on 80 meters. I sent them a $50 donation.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Bill.
Back there, you pointed out that it's best to put universal coordinated time UTC when you put cell cards.
Yes.
I was going to say, I have it on my cell phone. My cell phone allows me to show 2 different times I have. Local time I have UTC time going now. And I also keep UTC time on my rig that's attached to my radio on the computer.
Good. I tried that on my alarm clock, but I was always waking up 5 hours early.